Africa, a land of immense diversity and deep-rooted history. Long before the arrival of Europeans, powerful empires flourished across this continent, each with its own unique culture, innovations, and systems of governance. These were civilizations built on trade, art, and the deep wisdom of their people. The Kingdom of Aksum, with its advanced engineering and control over Red Sea trade routes, the Kingdom of Benin, renowned for its exquisite bronze and ivory artistry, the Kingdom of Congo, with its complex political hierarchy and vibrant cultural practices, the Empire of Mali, home to immense wealth, and the legendary city of Timbuktu, and the Kingdom of Zulu, whose military prowess was unmatched. These empires were beacons of civilization, contributing richly to the global tapestry of human history. But the winds of change were on the horizon. In the late 15th century, European explorers, driven by the pursuit of new trade routes and the promise of wealth, began arriving on African shores. What began as trade quickly escalated into conquest. Armed with advanced weaponry and a desire for domination, European powers exploited internal divisions and imposed their rule. Treaties were signed often under duress, and alliances were made with the promise of protection or trade. But these promises were quickly broken, as European nations carved up Africa, driven by greed and the belief in their own superiority. The scramble for Africa in the late 19th century saw the continent divided among European powers with little regard for the people who lived there. One of the darkest chapters in human history was the transatlantic slave trade. As European powers expanded their colonies in the Americas, the demand for labor grew. The solution? The enslavement of millions of Africans. Entire communities were raided, and men, women, and children were captured, torn from their homeland, and sold into bondage. These human beings were treated as commodities, packed like cargo into ships for the brutal Middle Passage, a journey across the Atlantic Ocean where many would not survive. Those who did were sold at auctions like livestock, their families shattered and their freedom lost. The impact of slavery on black people was devastating. Enslaved Africans were forced into grueling labor on plantations, mines, and in households across the Americas. They were stripped of their identities, forbidden from practicing their cultures, and subjected to inhumane treatment. Families were torn apart, and generations of black people lived in the shadow of oppression. Yet, even in the face of such brutality, the spirit of resistance was never extinguished. From the maroon communities of escaped slaves in the Caribbean and South America to the revolts led by figures like Toussaint Louverture and Nat Turner, enslaved Africans fought for their freedom. These acts of defiance laid the groundwork for the eventual abolition of slavery. The abolition of slavery was a long and arduous process, driven by the relentless efforts of abolitionists, both black and white, who campaigned tirelessly for the end of this inhuman practice. In the United States, the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 declared freedom for enslaved people in Confederate states, and by 1865, the 13th Amendment had abolished slavery nationwide. In other parts of the world, the abolition movement faced similar struggles. In the British Empire, the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 ended slavery, but not without significant resistance from those who profited from the trade. Across the Caribbean, South America, and Africa, the echoes of this brutal institution continued to resonate long after the last chains were broken. While slavery had a profound impact on the African diaspora, those who remained on the continent faced the brutal realities of colonial rule. The Europeans employed ruthless tactics to maintain control, divide and conquer being among the most effective. They exploited existing rivalries between ethnic groups, turning communities against each other to weaken resistance. New technologies and weapons, like the Maxim gun, gave them a military advantage, while the introduction of European legal systems, languages, and religions sought to erase African identities. The economic impact was devastating. African economies were reoriented to serve European interests, focusing on the extraction of resources like rubber, gold, and diamonds. This exploitation drained Africa's wealth, leaving a legacy of underdevelopment. Social structures were also deeply affected, as the forced adoption of European cultures and languages eroded indigenous practices and knowledge systems. The political systems imposed by the colonizers have proven difficult to adapt to post-independence realities, leading to decades of instability in many regions. The arbitrary borders drawn by European powers have left many African nations grappling with ethnic tensions and conflicts that persist to this day. By the mid-20th century, the tide began to turn as African nations rose up against colonial rule. The struggle for independence was marked by intense battles, both diplomatic and military, as leaders like Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, and Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya led their countries to freedom. These movements were not just about breaking free from colonial rule but also about reclaiming African identity and pride. However, the legacy of colonialism did not disappear overnight. The newly independent nations faced immense challenges: economic underdevelopment, political instability, and social divisions remnants of the colonial era. But through resilience and determination, African countries have continued to navigate these challenges, striving to build nations that reflect their own values and aspirations. The impact of colonialism and slavery continues to shape the lives of Black people across the globe. In Africa, the effects are seen in the ongoing economic struggles, the political challenges, and the cultural renaissance that seeks to reclaim pre-colonial identities. In the diaspora, the scars of slavery are evident in systemic racism, economic inequality, and the fight for civil rights that continues to this day. But despite gaining independence, many African nations have found it difficult to break free from the economic and political systems imposed by their former colonizers. Neocolonialism, in the form of economic dependency, unfair trade practices, and foreign interference in African politics, has continued to hold the continent back. This has left many African countries struggling with poverty, corruption, and political instability, perpetuating a cycle of dependency and underdevelopment. Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora, are still grappling with the legacies of these historical injustices. Many find themselves living in conditions of extreme poverty, or as part of a global underclass, often forced to seek better opportunities in the very Western countries that once colonized and enslaved their ancestors. This modern-day migration is a stark reminder of the inequalities that persist, with Africans often treated as second-class citizens in the global order. The path to reversing the impact of colonialism and slavery is complex, but not impossible. It begins with education reclaiming and teaching the true history of Africa, its empires, and its people. This knowledge is crucial for instilling pride and confidence in the next generation, helping them understand that their heritage is one of greatness, not subjugation. Economic empowerment is also key. Africans must take control of their resources, investing in local industries and fostering entrepreneurship. By building strong, self-sufficient economies, African nations can reduce their dependence on foreign aid and exploitation. This also means embracing technology and innovation, using these tools to drive development and create jobs for the continent's rapidly growing population. Politically, there is a need for strong, transparent leadership that prioritizes the interests of the people over those of foreign powers. This requires tackling corruption, strengthening democratic institutions, and ensuring that the voices of ordinary Africans are heard and respected. Culturally, Africans must continue to reclaim their identities, celebrating their diverse languages, traditions, and art forms. This cultural revival is essential for fostering unity and resilience in the face of external pressures. On a global scale, Africans and their diaspora must continue to fight for justice and equality, challenging the remnants of racism and colonialism wherever they exist. Movements like Black Lives Matter are a powerful reminder that the struggle for true liberation is far from over, and that solidarity is essential in this fight. This video is a reminder of Africa's rich history, a history that predates colonialism and slavery, a history of innovation, resilience, and greatness. As Africans and descendants of Africa, it is crucial to honor this past, to learn from it, and to use it as a foundation for building a future that is truly our own. Let us not only remember the pain but also celebrate the triumphs. Let us rebuild our communities, our nations, and our cultures with the knowledge that we come from greatness. And let us reclaim our stories, our identities, and our futures, ensuring that the next generations can stand tall, proud of their heritage, and confident in their potential. Africa's story is far from over. The best chapters are yet to be written. As we move forward, let us be proud of our heritage, draw strength from our history, and work together to create a future where Africa stands tall, its people united, its cultures vibrant, and its economies thriving. The time for Africa is now. Together, we can write a new chapter, one of hope, progress, and lasting change.